Put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, Tog tips, and image reviews to help you improve your photography. Here's your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, that's me. How y'all doing tonight? It is Monday. Thanks for joining me for another episode of TogChat Live. This is number 41. So on Friday, I posted a social media message that got a lot of play over the weekend, and that is you need to get out and take pictures. So it sounded like a lot of you had some really good plans. I hope that all of you had a chance to use your cameras this weekend, get out there, do some shots, and I will look forward to seeing them hopefully in my Facebook group sometime really soon. So listen, it is great to see you guys. Wow, Kelly's here tonight. Kelly, like, we don't have an excuse tonight. No video games, nothing like that. Tony's here from the UK. We've got Mitch. We've got James. I know Troy's here because Tony and Chelsea are all done, so he made it. Bren, Doreen. We got a lot of people in here. Louise, guys, thank you. And as always, please check in. Let me know where you're from. It is always really cool to see how many different countries we get in here. So before I get going, I've been asking you guys this favor every show for the last couple of shows, and I'm going to keep asking because it's really helping out. I need you guys to take a minute and let your friends, your photography friends, know that we are live on YouTube. Tweet it, post it on Facebook, get the message out there. We want to see how many people we can get in here tonight to participate in what we've got going on. So please, take just a second before things get going and going crazy and let everybody know that TogChat Live is happening right now. And you can even share with them the link that we use, and that link is real simple. It is tog.chat/live. You don't have to copy and paste the whole YouTube URL. If they type that in, they'll be watching us in no time. And remember, TogChat happens 3 days a week. So it's Monday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night, okay? So I hope to see you guys for all three. All right, so listen, as we dive in, if you would like to have one of your photographs reviewed here on TogChat, it's really simple. Join my Facebook group. The link to the Facebook group is in the description section below, and my buddy Chad's going to paste that link in the chat for you any second now, so that if you're not a member of the Facebook group, take a second and go and ask to be admitted. We check all your credentials, we look into your background, we take a look at your profile picture, and we see if we like the way you look, and we let people in twice a day. Okay, so those profile pictures, they're important. And if for some reason you're one of those folks that just really doesn't want to go anywhere near Facebook and can't stand it, but you still want to have me review a picture, you can do that. You can submit it using the link that you see on the screen. It also is in the description below, and Chad's going to paste that one into the chat any second now. It's tog.chat/photo review. It will ask you to fill out a couple of questions. It will give you a link to be able to upload your photograph so that you can have your picture considered for a review here on TogChat. Okay, so that being said, I want to dive in. I want to let you guys know, just in case, I am experimenting tonight, shocker, with some new technology. You might notice I don't have this like big thing sitting in front of me that's usually in front of me. I'm wearing the lavalier tonight, which means I can get up, I can demonstrate stuff if I need to, I can walk around. Hey, if I get really tired, I can go get a drink and just leave you guys talk to yourselves in the chat room. But the good part is it should be a little better sound quality. Also, the volume, all that should fit better with the intro. So fingers crossed, we'll see how it goes, all right? So let's switch the screen over. I want to dig into our first shot. So we're going to start off with a couple really cool shots tonight. Now, before I dig into this, I had somebody mention to me about a week ago that they were a little intimidated to submit to my Facebook group because we have some really cool pictures. And because I oftentimes talk about really cool pictures when I do these photo reviews. So I want to explain to you, number one, the way that I pick the pictures for TogChat. Because obviously we only do like 5 or 6 of them on a good night. So I'm not looking for the best. And I think tonight's actually a good example of that, even though we're going to start out with some pretty crazy ones. I'm looking for pictures that I feel have the most potential for me to teach something, to discuss something that's important that people need to kind of get their heads wrapped around. That's the idea behind the ones that I picked. And believe me, gang, in the Facebook group, we have got literally people that have been shooting for a couple months and are posting their people pictures, and then we've got people that have been at it for years. So it's a very, very wide range. We're not holding anybody to professional standards. We're holding people to their own standards, and it's really based on where you're trying to get to as a photographer. That's the goal, okay? So I see some of you guys saying that you just tweeted. Really, really appreciated. Awesome. So let's dig into this picture. So this shot is from Dave Dundas, who is in Surrey, British Columbia. You guys can see all the stats there on the screen, so I'm not going to read you all that stuff. But as always, I do want to give you the background, okay? So the background is this. David found this slip, and it's kind of a vintage slip, and it gave him a very Maryland kind of feel to it. So he had a model in mind. He suggested to her that he wanted to try this whole idea with very dramatic lighting and rain, okay? So part of where he's stuck here, and we're going to talk about this, is he's not sure if this would be considered kind of like a film noir look or something else, and he's not even sure that it's really, for that matter, a Maryland look, because you've never really seen a picture of Maryland like this. I mean, obviously, we've all seen the movie Flashdance, or at least if you were around in the 80s, you saw the movie Flashdance. So that's all something that, you may be, familiar with, kind of that look and feel. But he's very happy with the way it turned out and with the way the concept came together. So here's what's cool about this. He built a rainmaker. If you guys have been shooting for a little while, and you've been on YouTube and reading tutorials and that kind of stuff, you've seen there's a bunch of people that have videos out there about how to make different versions of kind of DIY rainmakers that you can create rain with. So basically, he's got a simple pump running overhead to a PVC pipe with a bunch of garden nozzles mounted on it. So he made a slightly more advanced one. Some of them are literally just done by like poking holes in a garden hose. But, others. Guys, I see your sound message there, Troy. Got it. Relax. We'll get to it. I'm not going to pause the show and play with it. I'm aware of it. Thank you. Appreciate it. So, he's got it inside a small 12-foot by 12-foot pond that he basically made with some large tarps, and using 2x6s as a frame to work with, okay? So his lighting setup, and this is where things start to get a little bit fun. He also sent us a lighting diagram that I'm going to show you guys in a second. So he's got 3 ProPhoto D1s, all with two of them with large softboxes, one on either side of the subject in the front. And in fact, here, let me go ahead and I'll switch over to that lighting diagram while I'm telling you about the lighting. That would make sense, wouldn't it? So here's the lighting diagram he's got set up. So he's got the 2 ProPhotos in the front with large softboxes, one on either side of the model. And in the back, about 4 or 5 feet away, he's got another one that has a beauty dish on it, and it's pointed straight at the girl's face, okay? These are all triggered with Yangwano 622 triggers. Why they're triggered with 622 triggers, I will never quite understand, but that's what they're triggered with, okay? We've got ProPhotos and we're using Yangwano triggers, but hey, as long as it works, that's all that matters, right? So post-production was done in Photoshop. He used Nik Silver Effects Pro, and then he did some tweaks to convert this in black and white. So the specific feedback, it was only a matter of time before somebody started singing Flashdance. There you go, Brent. The specific feedback that he's looking for here, does it qualify as film noir? Would it be glamour? Could it be beauty? So let's start there. Dave, I don't know that I would call it film noir. I think film noir has a much more kind of dramatic look and feel to it. That being said, I'm not sure that I would actually worry about categorizing it, honestly. I mean, it's a very cool shot, especially number one, given the problem solving that you did. Number two, this shot took a lot of effort. It took a lot of patience and tolerance on the part of your model. There is a lot of coordination that has to happen. This is not an easy pose/posture for someone to hold. So all across the board, there's a lot going on here. So this was a pretty aggressive shot to take on. So, I think for me, I would consider it more of a glamour feel, But if you read the definitions of, glamour and beauty and even film noir, the problem of it is they all kind of overlap a little bit. Hence, not sure I would really stress that much. I will say this, and by no means is this the end-all definition, okay? So I just want to kind of give you a point of reference. For me, film noir is something that's done without modifiers other than like a Fresnel modifier. In other words, most of the shots done back in the film noir days were not done with diffusion of any kind. They were done with direct, harsh lights. And that was part of the masterfulness of that lighting technique, is that it was either very sparse, something as simple as a spotlight, or it was many multiples of lights, but put together in a way that you literally would think it was a softbox by today's standards. So all that being said, not sure that I'd worry about the label. Literally I have two things that I would throw out there as kind of in a perfect world thing, and they're really not complaints. One, this is the OCD in me. I do really wish that I could see the very bottom of the chair and or the water that it's going into. I've done similar things with water in a studio where you're basically making, a pond to work in. I understand that it is often, physically a challenge to be able to get the base of things in the shot. So by no means does that ruin the picture for me at all. I want to be really clear. But I just, always that's one of those things. If we're going to get that close to the anchor, I'd love to see the anchor. If for some reason her hair wasn't as long and it was cropped a little higher, then it probably wouldn't bother me as much. The other thing that I would love to see you try with, because if I'm a betting man, since you went to the trouble of building this PVC pipe with the garden nozzles in it and setting up an electric pump and all that stuff, you're probably hoping to use this again. I would encourage you, in fact, let me switch back here to the lighting diagram for just a second. I would encourage you to maybe try and take that beauty dish, and if you can put it up on a boom arm, center it above the subject and behind her, so it's actually coming forward a little bit. The reason why I say that, and again, this is being really nitpicky, Dave, so by no means am I saying this was a failed shot. I think this was an awesome shot. But by centering it, you're going to get the same amount of highlight across the whole body on that top edge, and you won't have the situation where the raindrops are a lot brighter on camera left than they are on camera right. So again, not the end of the world here, but I think you're going to find that's going to balance things out a lot more. In fact, I'll be honest, if I was trying this shot, I probably would have done it with the one overhead light and left out the two front ones. I love the fact that you used the two front ones. I think worked out wonderfully. I'm just admitting it would not have been part of my original thought process as I was solving that problem, but I think that you did a great, great job there. One other thing that you might want to consider, and this is easier said than done, so believe me, it does not bother me. But if you've been to any of these photo reviews, you know that we get people who are kind of very literal with their interpretations of things. Her left arm, which is the arm that's holding onto the chair, if she were to bend her elbow a little bit more and slide the hand back, we would actually be able to see the hand, and she could kind of do an elegant grab. The key to that is she's not going to have a great way to support herself, so she's not going to be able to hold the pose very long. And obviously, she could only hold this pose for a set period of time anyway, between the fact that it's a very uncomfortable posture and the fact that she's got water dropping into her nose. So this is almost like waterboarding going on here. So believe me, I would not stress that at all, but I think that, definitely excellent attempt, and I really appreciate you sending along the lighting diagram. Next week, gang, when we open up TogChat, I'm going to give you guys some multiple references for being able to do lighting diagrams. There are a bunch of options that you have in terms of some online tools. Obviously, if you guys have watched my last frame videos, there's the Satellite 3D software, which is awesome and also an excellent learning tool for lighting. So there's a couple different things. I'm going to go ahead and share those with you guys so that you can take a look at that, okay? So before we jump into the next shot, just really quick, gang, we got to take care of a little bit of business. So please remember, follow me on social media. If you are not already following me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, please do. And of course, the really, really important stuff too. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you doing? Subscribe. That way you get a notice of every video that's coming out. So please do that. And then of course, really, really appreciate it. That little thumbs up down below, hit that button, give the video a thumbs up. And of course, don't hesitate to comment. Comments are always appreciated. And remember, the comments that are going by in the chat window right now, we're gonna preserve them in the video, but they disappear from YouTube when the video is over. So the comments I'm talking about are the ones underneath the video. They're all greatly, greatly appreciated. And gang, if you happen to have a question that you would like answered tonight, don't hesitate to click that little $ down in the bottom of the chat window. That is for Super Chat. Super Chat will guarantee you that I will pause, I will answer your question so that you get an answer. As always, you guys know that I will take 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the show, even if I have to go over a few minutes so that I can do some Q&A. But if you've got something you just really need to get the answer to, Super Chat is the best way to do it. You can make a donation of anywhere from $1 on up to $500, and you'll be able to type your question as you do that. The larger your donation, the more characters YouTube lets you type in. Okay? So, gang, I want to switch over to our next shot here. Let me go ahead and clean that label off the screen here. And next we've got another really crazy water picture. So there's a theme tonight, but only for the first two pictures, okay? So this one comes to us from Jan in the Netherlands. And you've got all your tech specs up there in the top, so I'm not gonna read them. This was a composite. He did use several shots to get different parts of the blue water together, okay? So to give you the background that Jan shared with us, the shot took a lot of preparation. He made a 12-foot by 12-foot pond from wooden frame. Also, he used a black synthetic foil, which is the same kind of stuff you use if you're going to make like a pond in your garden. Then he also took some additional foil planks. Chris, thank you very much. Chris, if I was going to use one light modifier only, it would have to be a shoot-through umbrella. If I could only have one modifier and nothing else in my arsenal, it's the modifier that I encourage every photographer to start out with, and that's a shoot-through umbrella. They are the most versatile, they are easy to use, and if you understand, so, learning required here if you want to be a good photographer, if you take the time to understand the inverse square law properly, you can use a shoot-through umbrella to replicate darn near any other kind of modifier. There's a video that's coming out. It's a couple days behind schedule, but it's coming really soon. And I make a comparison shooting a beauty shot with a beauty dish and then shooting the same shot with a shoot-through umbrella. And I'm able to replicate almost exactly not only the lighting, but the catch lights in the eye using the shoot-through umbrella compared to the beauty dish. So that would be my absolute first choice if I could only have one. Second on my list, it'd probably be a medium-sized softbox or an octadome. Medium-sized softbox being 24 by 32 or 36 inches. If it was an octadome, I would probably want to go for a fairly big one, 58 inches or 60 inches, like 5 feet. That would be kind of the ideal size for me. Okay, so back to Jan's shot here. We know that it's a composite shot. We know that he did it in a 12-foot by 12-foot pond using the garden material that you use for making ponds to hold the water. Also on the sides, he kind of made two big wings to catch water so that it would run back down because they were going to be throwing water across the set. So he wanted something that was going to catch water and drain it back in. They're set up at about 4 feet tall. They're attached to light stands so that it runs down. They had the model standing in a plastic tub in the middle of all this because they knew there was going to be a lot of water, not only spraying, but falling down off of her. So camera was mounted on a tripod. Remember, the finished shot is a composite of several images with regards to the water flow and the water drops. He shot it on a white background. His main light was a Pro Photo strobe, and it's worth noting it's an older Pro Photo, so it's not a D1 like the shot that you saw a minute ago from Dave. And that's important. I'll explain in a second, okay? So It was an older Pro Photo. He's got a Hensel 22-inch beauty dish on it, just a white beauty dish, none of the silvers or the creams. It's aimed slightly down, and it's about 7 feet from the model, which is back fairly far. So a 22-inch beauty dish at 7 feet away is really giving you a very strong directional light. So you're going to get very fast fall off on the light, okay? For rims, he's got 2 Pro Photo strobes with standard reflectors and grids at about 6 feet on either side behind the model and aimed towards her. And you can see, if you look close, you catch here the edges of her face. You can tell that there's a rim light involved, okay? So for background light, he had one Pro Photo with a standard reflector and a blue gel about 8 feet high on a boom stand and about 8 feet from the backdrop. So obviously, he's got some space to work in here because we've got stuff that's spread out, 7 feet in one direction, 8 feet in another. So he's got a good bit of room to work in. He had the strobes dialed way down because they wanted fast recycle times to be able to take multiple shots in a second, and also very short flash duration to freeze the flashes. Now here's where the cool part comes in. I'm going to come back and talk about that flash duration in a second. So he metered the shot at 5.6 ISO 100, but he wanted more depth of field, so he raised the ISO up to 400 to be able to get things stopped down to f11. So there's a really good example where you're using the exposure triangle to solve a problem. Yes, you always want to try and get as close to your base ISO as possible. There are times where needs dictate otherwise. This is a really great example. Now, this is the point where people will usually chime in and say, was this done with high-speed sync? Well, gang, hold on to the table or the chair that you're sitting at, because guess what? This tack-sharp water was recorded without high-speed sync. Oh my God. It really is possible. You really can do it. For all the debates, for all the people that love to just drive me nuts over this high-speed sync crap, there's more than one way to get the job done. My point to many of you has been, yeah, high-speed sync's great if you really have a need for it. Most of you don't have a need. And for those of you that think high-speed sync is how you make a background dark, then you shouldn't even be allowed to use a flash, period. Because you haven't done your learning, you haven't done your research yet. What Jan did, which was brilliant, he knew that he was going to have fast-moving water. He knew that he had to pay attention to the flash duration, that he couldn't just throw it and hope that everything would be fine, because then it would potentially be blurry. In fact, if we go back to Dave's shot just really quick, this wasn't done with high-speed sync either, and you'll notice that the water drops are blurred. I'm surprised nobody asked, because you guys really bummed me out there. I totally expected you all to ask me about high-speed sync with this shot. I love the fact that he let him blurred. In my opinion, high-speed sync would have ruined this shot. But coming back to Jan's shot, you couldn't have gotten away with this. If this water was blurry, it would have lost all the impact. So Jan did a little bit of research, really simple research, on the internet. It's amazing what you can do on the internet. He found out that these older Pro Photos that he was using, when they're in manual, they fire at 1/12,000th of a second. So remember, when you're in a studio, walking with axis of Peter, can you use high-speed sync? Yeah, if you're an idiot. Like, the point is, Peter, there's no need to use high-speed sync. Like, seriously, so follow along. He has an effective shutter speed of 1/12,000th of a second, which is more than enough to stop the water. That's because when you're in a studio, you're not relying on the ambient light, you're relying on the strobe. So even though his shutter speed for this shot was 1/200th of a second, that's the maximum shutter speed that his camera will sync at. It doesn't matter in terms of stopping the action. The effective shutter speed for this shot is 1/12,000th of a second, which is more than enough to stop water that's being thrown through the air. We're not talking about like trying to stop a bullet or something here. This is water that's being soft tossed. Okay? So yes, you need a fast shutter speed, but no, you don't need insane speeds. So the other problem is, Peter, now here's where you use the high-speed sync if you're an idiot statement came from. So I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about it in general. You got to go back to the problem solving that Jan did. Remember that when you use a strobe that works with high-speed sync, it also, when you go into that high-speed sync mode, you're reducing the power output of the flash. By reducing the power output, you're going to have to raise your ISO, or you're going to have to put the lights a whole lot closer. So when you're throwing water around, you don't want your electronics close to the water. You need them backed up. Hence, I talked about the distances Jan was set at, and I mentioned he had a big space. He was smart enough to keep all his gear away from the water. So if you're doing that with high-speed sync, you're definitely going to be pushing your ISO, and you're going to have to go to a wider aperture. You're going to have a hard time with most units on the market today, not only getting the shutter speed up, but you're going to have to push the ISO and probably drop your aperture down to around 5.6. So then you run into a depth of field issue. So this was simple, basic, good old school problem solving. And it involves the one thing that I pushed on you folks all the time: knowing your gear. Understand what your gear's limitations are, what its capabilities are, and then you got to understand the basics, gang. You got to understand how strobes work. But that stuff's easy to learn. You have to understand depth of field, and that's easy to learn. You just watch a video on any of this stuff, don't think you've learned it. It's no different than if you go watch my egg video. In fact, I don't care if you watch any of my videos. If you watch the video and you think you learned it, or you watch a Tony and Chelsea video and you think you learned it, or a Jason Lanier video and you think you learned it, you didn't learn squat. All you got was a bunch of stuff shoved in your head. You have to take that information, you have to go out, and you have to do it so that it gets added to your visual database. Then you'll learn it. So, I mean, Jan, this is just a brilliant approach. So, his procedure. Let's get to the rest of the details here. He had the model hold a pose that she could easily hold for like 10 seconds at a time. He took a photo of her without the liquid because he wanted to make sure they had a great shot of her face. And let's face it, when you're throwing liquid at somebody like that, it's really hard to get them to not close their eyes. It's a reflex instinct. So he wanted to make sure that he had, a good frame with the eyes open, a relaxed expression. So he'd do a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and his two assistants would throw the liquid. He would press the button and do multiple exposures in continuous mode with the strobes. Okay. So it was a little bit of a spray and pray kind of scenario, but Stephen Muncie, it's coming, man. True story, Stephen Muncie. Stephen asked me here, I wish I would do a video on high-speed sync alternatives. So, Joe, your pretty label, please leave a comment. It's still up. Is it really? No, my pretty label, please leave a comment isn't still up. Sorry. At least it certainly shouldn't be. So let me know if the rest of you guys can see that. I think you may be frozen there, Laura. This leave a comment. So sorry. My bad. There we go. So anyway, Stephen, I will be doing a whole series. Well, when I say a whole series, it's 2 videos on the high-speed sync alternatives. As soon as the weather stabilizes here in the Northeast, I have a hard, fast rule about photography and the winter. I don't shoot outside. I just don't do the cold, period. I'm a wuss, I acknowledge. I did plenty of that back on my newspaper days. I have no desire to do that now. So today was like in the 70s. Tomorrow is in the 80s. As long as the weather stabilizes here, I will be outside really soon doing a boatload of shooting for a lot of this high-speed sync stuff and that to show you guys not only how to get the dark backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. So, and it all comes back to, just so you know, gang, it all comes back to simple problem solving. There's no rocket science involved. The idea of having the subject brighter than the background, we did that stuff back in the 70s. Sorry. The idea of stopping liquid like this, we did this stuff back in the 70s. This stuff is not new. There are lots of different ways that you accomplish these things. And there's no one size fits all. The reason why so many people like high-speed sync is it's kind of like this one size fits all solution, and it's not. Because it actually doesn't solve all the problems. In fact, it creates a lot of problems. And that's why so many people buy the high-speed sync stuff, and then they can't do it anyway. Because the worst part of it is to do a picture like this, or even to do the background dark outside, there's still problem solving involved. So like for me, I hate that whole bit with flash and the dark background outside. It's so freaking overdone. So for me, the easiest solution is if I want to do lighting outside, I'm going to put the model in the shade, and I'm going to take modifiers out, and I'm going to light the model like she's in a studio, and then have the background go dark, and have super awesome light. Or you could do the Manny Ortiz version. Manny tends to shoot close to sunset, when he could throw a little bit of strobe in, get the pop on the subject, but he's also out in the streets of Chicago where he's getting traffic lights and all those cool lights. Okay, so again, but that's problem solving. That's like simple problem solving. He doesn't have to do high-speed sync to do that because he's shooting at a time of day where the light's coming down. So that's the point, okay? I told you guys, a bunch of you guys, that I have an intern who's going to be working with me for the summer. In fact, y'all have to behave because she's here. Her name is Morgan. I just ordered the last one today because I've been getting them on eBay. So I did this for an intern that I had a year or so ago, and I'm doing the same thing for Morgan. Morgan's coming with me to work with me for the summer so she can learn about lighting and to sweep my floors, but to learn about lighting. So I purchased on eBay 4 Vivitar 283s, old school strobes. And that's going to be her lighting kit for the summer that she is going to work with. And you guys are going to get to follow along with her learning curve over the summer. And we're going to go out and we're going to do dark backgrounds with those Vivitar 283s. We're going to go ahead and do stop action. There's a shot that I did many, many, many years ago of a light bulb being broken by a hammer. I lit it with one Vivitar 283. I recently recreated it, which of course this has nothing to do with people, but I'm going to show you guys this in a video. I recently redid that with the new CFL, the spiral bulbs, and a ball peen hammer. Ball peen hammers are the ones with the round head. So it's a hammer smashing the light bulb, and I lit it with a LumaPro 180. Not the 180R, which will do high-speed sync. The LumaPro 180, which is a straight-up manual-only flash. Tack sharp. If you want to, you can sit and count every piece of glass in the shot. So again, high-speed sync is a cool feature. High-speed sync has its place. High-speed sync can simplify things if you actually understand what you're doing. But if you buy high-speed sync simply for the idea of taking pictures outside, not a good idea. So, and now, by the way, so I see Troy Hall asking about the 283. So everybody put pause on that 283. There's something really important for me to tell you, especially Troy, since your camera's at the shop right now. First of all, the 283 is the one. I don't like the 285. But if any of you decide to go to eBay and buy some of these, you can find them on eBay. You can find them anywhere from like $5 or $10 on up to about $25. Always make sure that you check the listing to make sure it's a working one. Some people just sell them for parts. Here's the important part that you need to know, okay? Do not put it on your camera. The Vivitar 283, if you put it on your camera's hot shoe and turn them both on, you fried your camera. So you've been warned. Don't go buy one of those and try and use it for on-camera flash and then come crying to me. I've told you. You don't put it on your camera. It's for off-camera flash only. Morgan will probably be using a set of Neewer triggers or Korean triggers. And literally what I will wind up doing is going out and buying her a set of 4 inexpensive wireless triggers that work up to at least 30 feet. I don't remember what the brand was I bought for my last intern. But that will be her lighting kit. And she's going to start out with one of them, go to 2, go to 3, go to 4, period. And you guys are going to get to kind of watch as it goes, okay? Mark North, doesn't the 283 only have the colors on the thyristor that match the aperture? That is absolutely correct. That's exactly how it works, yes. It's an automatic flash. It is not a TTL flash, and the automatic is not through the lens. The automatic is based on a sensor on the front of the flash. It's old school, man, and it is a workhorse flash. That is why when LumaPro showed me their strobes, I jumped all over the LumaPro strobes. They are so simple. You know, all of you, I want you to imagine, you guys that have your Yongwoonos and your Godox strobes and all that kind of stuff, I want you to imagine walking up to a flash blind where you can't see the back of it. Walk up to it blind and change the settings on the flash without having to bring the flash down so that you can read it. You can't do it. With a LumaPro, I can reach behind the flash, I can feel what's there, and I can change my settings. Super, super simple. Vivitar 283, same thing. I can set the settings up. I don't have to look at the flash. I don't have to see the flash. It's as basic and as simple as they come. So again, that's the key. I have nothing, it's like frequency separation, gang. I have nothing against high-speed sync. I just think it's really stupid that people spend ridiculous amounts of money on high-speed sync and they don't know how to use it. So what's the point? If you would learn how to use it with basic equipment first, then you would actually understand if you truly have a need. But just like many people think depth of field is a blurry background, a lot of people go out and buy a high-speed sync just so they can have a dark background. That is the dumbest freaking thing ever, period. Okay, back to this picture. So he did his work in Adobe Camera Raw, then into Photoshop to create his layers. Obviously picking the splashes from the different ones that he wanted. They did a whole bunch of pictures until they got exactly what they were looking for. And basically, the session ended when one of the assistants accidentally threw the water and hit the model square in the face. So there was too much blue at that point. The troubleshooting aspect of this for Jan in the future is that he would, one, not light the background, so that he could give it a color tint in post. And then number two, try and find something that he could put on the model's skin so that he doesn't wind up with the bluish tint that you've got on her hands and on her shoulders. And indeed, I would actually go with even just a water-based cream, Jan, something as simple as Cheap Suave. If you put that on like fairly aggressively, that will probably solve your issue with that. The other option that you would, well, no, actually, I was going to say Dermablend. Do not use Dermablend. So I would just use water-based lotion, and I think that will solve your problem. But at the same time, don't take my word for it. If you ask a makeup artist, they should be able to give you a really good, suggestion. But I absolutely love it. Again, guys, this is problem solving. This is what photography is all about. And his lighting setup, he also sent us the same thing. There's your 4 strobes. You've got your 2 background rim lights. You've got your strobe with the blue gel aimed at the background, and then the beauty dish up on the top. Okay? So, really, really good work. Let's see. Before we go on to the next one, really quick here, gang, we're going to change gears. We've got a completely different kind of picture coming up. Obviously, you guys have already seen how the Super Chat works, and I really appreciate the Super Chat. You folks might want to consider checking out what I do on Patreon. If you haven't been to my Patreon profile, please take a look at it. If you are able, you can support me and what I'm doing on Patreon for as little as $1 per video, or for that matter, $1 per month. That's $12 per year. That $12 gets you access to things that you don't get here on YouTube and things that you don't get in my Facebook group. For instance, these photo reviews. I only do 5 or 6 photo reviews per show on Monday nights. If you are one of my patrons and you post an image in my Facebook group, you are eligible to have your images reviewed on Patreon on Friday nights. Friday nights we do a Patreon-only show that is strictly for Patreon members. So, and there's a lot of other benefits there that you can check out, but I would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, take a look and see what's there. And if you're able to provide support, it'd be greatly appreciated. And if you can't provide support, gang, there's no sweat. Just please make sure you show up for these shows and spread the word, let people know what we're doing and what's available for them to come and watch, okay? All right, so this shot comes to us from Belgium, from Paige. All the tech specs are up at the top there. I'll let you guys read those. She shared this image with us because she's actually really unhappy with it. And she's frustrated with essentially the way this whole shoot went. So she's looking for some suggestions and she's looking for some guidance. Mark asks, why do I prefer the 283 to the 285? Simplicity and basics. Honestly, that's all. The 283 came out first, Mark, then came the 285. The 283 was one of the first flashes that I owned. So sadly, I'm old enough that my first flash, actually my first 2 flashes, were referred to as potato mashers. One was one of those classic Honeywells, the gray ones that look like the UFO on top on the handle. And then my second one, and my first automatic flash, because the Honeywells were manual only. My second one was a Vivitar, and I do not remember the model number, but it was a Vivitar potato masher. It's the only potato masher that Vivitar ever made. So it was a handle strobe with kind of a square boxy head to it. And then right after that, because it didn't go over very well, people looked at it like it was a cheap copy of the Honeywell, and it did not sell well. So they didn't make them very long. But not long after that, they came out with the 283. The 283 is as simple a flash as you can get. And it's a workhorse. You can beat the bejesus out of them. Most of these strobes, like I'm getting on eBay, these things have been around for like 20 or 30 years. And they're in great shape. They work wonderfully. you can beat the heck out of them. And that, again, that's also one of the things I like about the Luma Pros. I've literally dropped 2 of my Luma Pros. Like one just taking it off the stand and not paying attention, dropped it, bounced, bang, flying across the room. I've had another one where the stand get kicked over. They work great. So they're workhorse strobes, and that's important to me. All those cool features, yeah, you know, there are times where it would be nice to have some of the cool features that Godot's offering for a shoot. Or there were times where, you know, it would be nice to have the power of a pro photo for a shoot. But the problem of it is for those few things, there are other ways that I can solve that problem. So for me, you guys hear me talk about it all the time. I photograph people. So when I'm playing with my lighting, I don't want to be playing with my lighting. I want to be able to set it up. I want it to work. Done. I don't want to have to think about it too much. I don't want to have to pay a whole lot of attention to the gear. I want to pay attention to what the light's doing. And then if I have to make an adjustment on the fly, I want to be able to make it quick. And believe me, I don't mind walking from the camera to the flash. So the whole idea of having a controller on camera, that's not bad. I mean, I do that with my Luma Pros. So it's nice. It's a convenient feature. But I don't really mind walking back and forth because it's not like I'm going to do that 50 times because I will use a light meter to kind of start my setup. Unless it's a setup I've done many, many times and I kind of know where to start. So I'm going to walk to that light once or twice, done. And I'll use that time to talk to my model, discuss with her, you know, what the idea is for the shot, what we're going to do, all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, Mark, that's why. I just, for me, the 283 was simpler, easier, more basic, and it was less money back then. So, you know, this came out when I was a teenager, and I didn't have tons of money to spend on gear. Okay, so back to Paige's picture that she is not happy with and wants some suggestions on. So she wanted the pale porcelain skin. She didn't want any shadows, no visible shadow edges. She wanted everything to be very soft. And I will let you know, Paige has shared a behind the scenes shot here so I can give you guys a sense of how she did it, because contrary to our last 2 shots, which were with some really high-end gear, we're doing a little bit more kind of DIY here. Oh, Mark, if you have a 283, yeah, enjoy it. Just don't put it on your camera's hot shoe, whatever you do. No hot shoes for the 283. They will fry your digital camera, okay? So the setup that she did here, in fact, let me pull up the setup shot so you guys can see it. So she worked with 2 Edelman and 2 small soft boxes. So if you look close, you can see that these soft boxes are separated here. In fact, I'll go ahead and pull the shadows way up just so we can see that. So you can see the 2 boxes are there to give a nice broad light going across. She's got them both set to the same output. They're set up high. They're angled down as much as she could before the softbox, of course, hit the stand. The model's sitting directly under them. She's got 2 white foam boards. And I love these white foam boards. These are actually like not foam core. These are like styrofoam that you could go to like a craft supply store and get. And she's taped them together to make a really, really long one, which again, simple, brilliantly done. Albert Reed, Honeywell Strobinars, yeah, man, those things were great. Plus, they made great weapons if you were in a crowd and you needed people out of your way. They were awesome. So she also used, which we don't see in this shot here, another piece of foam underneath the model as an upfill, okay? So the first, as she puts it, gripe that she has with the shot is that she had to do a lot of work in RAW to fix the shot, not just in developing, but also she had to fix some issues with the color balance and the exposure. She didn't have any extra lights to use for the background, so I mean, this was it for her lighting. She had the 2 strobes. So ultimately, she would like to have more light to be able to light the background separately. In fact, the background, by the way, is not seamless paper. It's actually a white roller curtain, okay, which, you know, you can go to like Walmart and get one of those for like $10. And you've got a nice long curtain that you can clip up, and you can see she's got it clipped up at the top. So again, awesome problem solving here. Simple stuff, okay? She feels like the final image is a little bit overexposed. So let me switch back to the image now that we're done with the setup. She feels like it's a little bit overexposed or burned out. She's not thrilled with the hot spots on the forehead or on the top camera right cheekbone and nose. They were there in the lighting, but she thinks her post-processing actually kind of took them over the edge and just burned them out completely. So she feels she probably should have been more careful there. Due to the fact that the light's way up, she feels it adds a little bit of weirdness to the shot, but she also would have liked to get some kind of sparkle into the model's eyes. So the upside of all this, as much as Paige is not happy with the picture, the model was happy with it, the makeup artist was happy with it, so they're going to work with her again. So some of the things that Paige is thinking she wants to try to tweak with this. Completely different lighting setup so that she can really get things no contrast, very porcelain. She's looking for suggestions on, maybe changing the background color instead of pure white to help take some of the paleness out and get the model to pop a little bit more. As she puts it, pay attention to that bloody color balance. And the shadows are still too dark for what I wanted, so perhaps add a fill from below. Okay, so Paige, I think, in my opinion, so let's start with my opinion, okay? My opinion is you're being way too tough on yourself. Seriously, I'm not saying this to be nice. I'm saying that based on what you're telling me you're trying to accomplish here, and especially seeing your setup and understanding what you have available to work with, I actually think you did a great job, and I think that you could solve a lot of your complaints with this shot actually fairly easily with the gear that you have. So now, let me explain, because some of it means a small tweak to what you've done. Some of it is simply a question of whether or not you're kind of willing to accept where the disconnect would be from maybe exactly what you're thinking to what the alternative is. So let me just say this, that based on the gear that you have and the setup that you did, I honestly think that this was brilliant problem solving. I would say that in order to get that background a little bit whiter, possibly, you're not going to be able to do it much, but possibly you might be able to go ahead and put your subject just a tiny bit closer to the background. Indeed, if you get her too close, you will start to pick up some shadows in here coming off the head from the lights, and we don't want that. But I will tell you that if you, and I apologize, did you tell me if you're working in Lightroom and Photoshop? You did not mention it here. So if you're working in Photoshop, it would be very easy for you to select this background and either just take like a curves layer or even a brightness layer at that point and just brighten it. And it's going to go pure white. I have to be honest, I like the idea of it being white. Your suggestion that maybe you go with slightly like an off color to make it pop more, I think that would be a completely different picture, but I actually really like it, okay? Mark Edelman, your idea, yes, but you're missing the point, Mark. That suggestion, so Mark's saying here, what about lighting the background only and throwing backlight with large V-flats in the front to make the lighter even softer, more even? That's what I do. If you guys watch my videos, I have like 3 videos that show that lighting setup. In this space, Mark, that's not really gonna be that functional. And she's got a really, really small background to try and get an awful lot of light to come forward. So yeah, if you're in a big studio, you can dream that. But we're problem solving here with Paige, and she's in a small space. And I would argue that based on what she's telling us she wanted, she's damn close, like really close. So I'm looking to squeak everything out of this that we can. So number 1, I would go ahead and bring the subject as close as you can to the backdrop before you start to pick up any shadowing here, because it looks from your diagram or from your behind the scenes shot, you can get a little closer. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to talk about the hands. If this were a normal modeling shot for somebody's portfolio, I would be telling you that I hate these hands. For this picture, in fact, I saw somebody type the comment in. Somebody typed in, Roy Patton said, I dig this photo, it gives a tortured soul kind of vibe to it. Yeah, I don't know that I would have come up with the words tortured soul, but I love the fact that it's off. And when I say it's off, I mean that she's got this, almost kind of this albino look. It's extreme. And it's, I don't know how I would describe the expression, but it's certainly not a happy expression. So I love, sorry, I'm tapping on the microphone. Sorry, gang. I love the hand being up against the chest with the other fingers coming up. I think that's actually like really, really awesome. Now, when you talk about the shadows, one of the things I want to point out to you, Paige, I don't know, actually you did. You said you were working with a makeup artist. So the next time, one of the things you want to do, since this is a situation where you can essentially pose your model and tell her not to move, right? This doesn't require all kind of posing and crazy stuff. In fact, less is better. So one of the things you want your makeup artist to do is blend down these lines. So by closing that hair right to the face, same on this side, you see how the hair right at the face kind of pushes back? The makeup artist can pull that forward so the hair makes a nice line down the face. That takes all those shadows out of the edge of the face. It's actually really easy to do, especially with this model straight here. That's really, really easy to do, okay? You're gonna have a little bit of trouble with it up here, but that's what dodging and burning's for if you wanna make that lighter. If it's really bugging you, have your makeup artist take some talcum powder and brush it into the hair up there. And it's going to make it a lot easier to blend that down to white. That's the trick we use when we want white. Use talcum powder. It's really, really easy, okay? Even sometimes, depending on the shot that you're doing, if you're not doing a tight close-up, if you have a model come in like a blonde, but she's naturally brunette and she's overdue with getting her hair colored, so the dark roots are starting to show, as long as you're not shooting a super, super tight close-up and not shooting down on her, but if you're gonna shoot like straight in, you can brush talcum powder into those parts, and it's gonna blend in and lighten up enough that it will really mask the dark roots. It's not gonna take them out completely, but it will dramatically minimize how much those dark roots show up. Obviously, it goes without saying, especially if you're shooting a modeling portfolio, that should always be part of your prep. If your model is someone that bleaches their hair blonde and you don't want those dark, ugly roots showing, don't assume that she'll take care of it. You need to have that conversation. And a little tip, guys, since it's mostly guys in here that are going to be shooting, you don't tell the girl to get her hair colored 2 days before the shoot in case the hair color goes bad, because then you're stuck on your shoot date. She needs to get the hair colored about a week prior to the shoot. That gives things time to settle out, look the way they're supposed to look, and God forbid if something went wrong with the color, she could potentially go back and get it actually recolored again, okay? So all that being said, talking about the catch lights in the eyes, Paige, I actually believe that had you gotten specular catch lights in this particular shot, I really think it would have taken away from the shot dramatically. I love the fact that she's kind of looking down. In fact, I would have encouraged you to maybe even lift that chin up even slightly more. Not a lot. You don't want it like way up, but I would actually love to see it go up just a tiny bit more, okay? No tanning. No, April, yeah. You always tell your models not to tan. In fact, you know, if you go to New York and you walk down Fifth Avenue, you know, through the garment district and that where all the models and that are, and you'll see a model walking down the street, you're going to see the most pale women that you've ever seen, okay? And there's a simple reason for that, guys. If the girl's too tanned, it's going to throw off the color relationships between her skin and the clothing that she's being photographed in. Let's face it, we all know it's easy to give a girl a tan in Photoshop. It's harder to take the tan out, and it's even more of a pain in the butt yet if she's half tan and half not tan because she's got tan lines. So yeah, for models, especially professional models, tanning, no go. And if they do tan, it's a light tan, and they're going to do it in a tanning bed because it's got to be even all the way around, okay? So, and then Paige, the only other thing that I would honestly recommend to this before I move off of this shot is I would encourage you to consider having the makeup artist do something slightly different with the lips. And maybe this is, this is kind of my opinion. I'm not a fan of the way the lips kind of fade out. And I'm normally not a fan of bright red lips, but this is a scenario where bright red lips could have been pretty cool, okay? And then one last thing, and here's a little Photoshop thing. When you reshoot this, if the girl has a crazy little end like this that your makeup artist can't get it tucked in, because this is one of those things like this hairstyle is screaming symmetry. So on the outside, this hair needs to be completely symmetrical. The only difference is going to be the bang. It's going to be in a little bit more on one side than the other, but the outside needs to be completely symmetrical. If your hairstylist can't do that in a reasonable period of time, and that doesn't mean she sucks, it just means sometimes it's not practical. In Photoshop, take the hair from one side, flip it and blend it to the other side so that you have that symmetry, and it's going to look really cool because then it starts to look surreal. Understand that anytime you do stuff with symmetry in a picture of a person, no human being is symmetrical. You guys have heard me say it many times before. If you ever meet the person who's got a completely symmetrical face, you should not walk, you should run in the other direction because the aliens have landed. So anytime you add that kind of symmetry into a shot, it gives it something that forces our brains to really study it and to really pay attention to. So if it's something for a modeling portfolio, you can't do it with their face, but if it's for your shot, yeah, you can totally do something with that, okay? All right, gang, let me get one more shot in. Actually, you know what? I want to get two in, so I'm going to go through these two really quick, and we'll go over time. Shocker, right? We'll go over time a little bit, and I'll answer some questions for you guys. So you guys can go ahead and start loading up some questions in chat. I'll make sure that I get them. So I wanted to talk about this because this is the kind of shot that Same thing, Mike, bra strap lines. They shouldn't have them. If a girl's, remember, gang, when you look up the word model in dictionary, it doesn't say anything about professional. So if you're dealing with a girl who models for fun, you're going to get what you get, right? That's it. You have to deal with that. If you're going to work with a model who is modeling professionally, who is serious about what she's doing, she's going to understand no tan lines. So, especially in the summertime when I was doing portfolios full time, believe me, I beat it into girls' heads like, you will do it. And they would go to the beach. If a girl's really committed, she can go to the beach, she can put lots of sunscreen on. And the big trick with sunscreen and models is, Mitch McCoy, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. The big trick with sunscreen and models, gang, and you got to tell them this. Don't assume that they know this. Tell them. You tell them to ignore the directions in the sunscreen. It's real simple. All the sunscreen you buy now, it all brags about how it's waterproof so you can get in the water and it stays on. No, it doesn't. So you tell the girl she's going to go, let's say, you're going to be shooting with her, but you also know the week before you shoot, she's going to the beach on vacation. And certainly she's not going to spend her vacation at the beach sitting inside. So you tell her, go outside and have fun, but be smart. So obviously it goes without saying, don't fall asleep in the sun. But number two, tell her, lots of sunscreen. Every time she gets in the water, she comes out and she puts more sunscreen on, period. If she's going to be at the beach or a place like that for a couple of days, take a bunch of different bathing suits, wear different ones every day. And for at least a part of the time, throw a t-shirt on. So, there are a lot of things that they can do. If she manages that really well, then even if she gets a little bit of tan lines, it's actually really easy for her to go spend a session or two at a tanning salon and balance that out without getting really dark. But if the girl doesn't pay attention, then yeah, it's on you as much as it is her. Just because you found a girl on Model Mayhem and she calls herself a model, don't assume that she knows all these things, because you guys didn't know them. So if you don't know it, you can't assume the girl knows it, right? You need to tell them. And again, it's not a rocket science thing. It's literally, the reason why I do all that with models, the reason why it's so important, it's management 101. If you ever get a job in the corporate world and you have an employee that has a bad habit, if you don't correct that bad habit, you are essentially encouraging the bad habit. That's the net result. So same with models. If you don't tell them, hey, don't get tan lines, you can't blame them for getting tan lines. So that's the way you have to look at it. So this shot comes to us from Zarli Win in Honolulu, Hawaii. You guys can read the specs there. No soda tonight. Water from YouTube. So this model was a friend of his. She had the model has a friend who has a bunch of cool vintage stuff, i.e. the grandfather clock and all that. So he was really into the clock. He knew that he wanted to do something with the clock. He wanted to capture a shot of the model with the clock, and originally he had her facing the clock. It was his assistant that suggested that she face away from the clock, and he was really thrilled with that. The space was tight, the shooting angle was limited, he was sitting literally on a couch, so he had no room to back up, and he only had enough space to put one speed light with a shoot-through umbrella. So because of that, he had a lot of work to do with shadows and that kind of stuff, on the back end in terms of softening these shadows that you see over here from the clock and everything. Also had to work with a lower aperture than what he ideally likes to work at. So we did it with one speed light on camera right with a shoot-through umbrella. Okay, so Zarli, here's the thing, and I'll apologize because I'm going to be a little tough on you in this picture, but it's a point that I want to make for everybody. In my opinion, let's start there, because this is not something you're going to read in a textbook. But this is something that I would encourage all of you, men and women, to think about. When we talk about glamour type photos, and I don't care if it's glamour by the dictionary definition, which is actually more like an old school Hollywood portrait, or if we talk about glamour by today's practical definition or the internet definition, which is how naked is she? Okay? So when we're talking about glamour, in my opinion, there are two categories that it falls into. And we're going to go all the way up to kind of the 50,000 foot level here. And by the way, I'm not getting into any discussions about is it trashy or not. That's a whole different conversation. So we're talking functional pictures. So up here at 50,000 feet, as far as I'm concerned, there are two categories. Category number one is the image is voyeuristic, meaning you don't feel like you're interacting with the subject. You feel like you're kind of peering and you're observing them from a distance. That is what this picture is. The other picture is interactive, meaning You feel like you are one-on-one with the subject and you're actually interacting with them. They're looking at you, you're looking at them, and you feel like you're learning something about them, right? Those are the two categories. So I personally, full disclosure before I go any further in this picture, have to be very honest, I hate voyeuristic pictures. I respect the genre. I have seen some really, really nicely done voyeuristic images. You know, the girl in the corset and the garter belt and the stockings and the high heels, and she's leaning on the mantle of the fireplace in the Victorian room. To me, that's just boring as hell. Like, if there's a really sexy woman there, I'd much rather be able to look at a picture that is the fantasy of me interacting with her. That's my personal taste. So, that being said, I gotta be honest, this kind of picture doesn't do it for me in the first place. And part of it is, Zarli, you started out your whole description of the picture because you thought the antiques were so cool. Well, did you look at this girl? Like, my God. With a subject like that, dressed like that, why do we want to take a picture of a grandfather clock? Like, so that's my problem. Like, I don't get it. So I struggle with a bunch of stuff. At a minimum, the door is a horrible distraction. Second to that, the frame growing out of her head. Third to that, the shoes stuck underneath the dress. Fourth to that, the hand that makes it look like she's got a stomach ache. It's kind of the perfect example of what is it you're really interested in photographing? Are you interested in photographing the grandfather clock, or are you interested in photographing the girl? Because even if you had, like, you started out with the girl looking at the grandfather clock, like standing next to it, and you said you didn't like that, you liked this better, but it's the same thing either way. How many girls hug grandfather clocks? And how many girls lean on them wearing see-through outfits in high heels with their eyes closed? Like, to me, there's no context to the picture that makes sense. And that's where I struggle. So there's, you know, when I look at this girl, there's just so much more that you could have done with her. Probably in a different space, because she's young and gorgeous and very sexy, wearing a very sexy outfit. And there's a grandfather clock, which is old. It's an antique. So for me, I really struggle with that. So, but you gotta pay really, really attention to all the little details. The floor is angled, the frames and door, you know, everything's just off. It's just off just a little bit. I think this is one of those scenarios, Zarli, because I've seen other work that you've done, and you've done really good work. This is one of those scenarios where I think you were just very excited about the experience you had that day, but you gotta remember, no one else is going to have the same experience that you do with your pictures. So we're kind of left to look at this, and yeah, for me, I'm sorry, just doesn't do it, okay? All right, so I wanna get one more shot in here, and then we're gonna do a quick Q&A, okay? This picture's from Amy in Idaho. All the stats are there, okay? Amy's a new member to my group. This is her first post. She is looking to build a wedding portfolio before she actually does weddings. So she spent 3 hours with this model. It was a TFP shoot. It turned out the model had kind of a very high fashion look, which she really liked. So that's what she kind of wound up focusing on. So far, all the TFP work that she's been doing, it's with local models, and she really would love to do beauty and fashion. However, she's in Idaho, which means that weddings and seniors are really what's going to bring the income in, and she's aware of that, okay? So this was lit with a speed light at about a third power and a 24-inch softbox on camera left, and a reflector on camera right. She wishes she had a little bit more fill light on camera left to capture on camera right, on the model's left, sorry, to capture the earring, though normally I prefer dramatic contrasty light. So, Amy, the reason why I wanted to point this out is a couple of things. In terms of what you're trying to do, so this is a big thing. In other words, shooting images for practice to build a portfolio to go out and get work. Bravo. So many people that are even in this chat room tonight wait until somebody pays them or asks them for pictures when it really, really counts, and they use that as a learning experience. Such a bad idea. Such a bad idea. Honestly, when you do that, you deserve to have it go bad. You simply do. So I'm thrilled to see that you're doing the practice. I have to really, really encourage you though, Amy. You got to work on your post-production. Big time. I'm on color-corrected screens. I've viewed this now on a 27-inch iMac on a cinema screen, on a 15-inch MacBook Pro, and on an iPad Pro, as well as a phone, actually. It's blown out on all of them. There's no detail in the skin. It's not really high fashion at all. She's pretty. If it were a beauty shot, there would be no jewelry. But so, I think what you really need to focus on here a little bit, honestly, is simplify things, okay? I actually love the composition. The off-center, where you have the negative space, I love all that. It's different. It really forces me to work through the image. I like when a picture kind of makes me work the way it wants me to, and doesn't let me down in the process. So I'm really thrilled with all that, but I would really, really, really encourage you, and I'd love to see you go back with this original file and maybe post it in the comments of your original post in my Facebook group. I would love to see you go back and reprocess this unless the original is blown out completely. And if that's the case, then it's a matter of starting in camera. You've got to be really careful with your exposure. But I have a feeling most of this is actually on post-production. And I would also encourage you, if you're looking to build a portfolio, leave the jewelry out. And if you don't know why, hang around, watch more of my videos, you'll know why. But definitely leave the jewelry out. So yeah, Brent, actually what I said was TFP, sorry, which is time for somebody, unless somebody else typed PFT. TFP is time for print. In other words, it's a trade. Nobody gives prints anymore, but it's basically a trade. The photographer, the model, the makeup artist comes together, everybody pitches in, creates a bunch of cool pictures, and then in the end, everybody gets copies of the pictures. That's essentially the idea. It's a great way to build a portfolio. Absolutely outstanding way to build a portfolio. Okay? All right, gang. So, breathe for a second here. I'm going to bring the questions up. I got a couple questions waiting for me, I believe. Yep, so do I do. Coney Geo Photography wanted to know what lavalier am I using. This is a Sennheiser. So I should, aside from the clipping that Troy was all excited about earlier, I should sound pretty much exactly like I sound in my videos now. I use a Sennheiser lavalier for my video stand-ups, and I had been using the Rode Podcaster, but now I'm going to be going with the Sennheiser, and it's wireless. I'm attached to a pack, so if I needed to, I can get up and walk around. Part of the reason why I'm explaining all that is I think I mentioned to you guys the last TogChat, I'm in the process now of rigging the studio downstairs to be able to do the same kind of live scenarios downstairs, but obviously in a shooting space. So that's coming, okay? Let's see. Brent Drafts, is JL only promoting on buzzwords? I'm really not sure what that means. Oh, unless that's a Jason Lanier thing. Maybe, possibly, probably, if he's smart. If that's what you're asking, Brent, if you're talking about JL meaning Jason Lanier, I'm not sure what you mean about the buzzwords, but if you're talking about, like, is he doing videos that go with buzzwords? Probably. I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. I don't actually follow all the videos that everybody puts out. I catch one here, one there. But if that's what he's doing, that's a smart thing. That's exactly what I did. All the videos I did last year had to do with portraiture and lighting and then speed lights. So I do them in clumps. And then I did 4 marketing videos, etc. So I've got a couple more kind of random things that are coming out to do with basic lighting. And then as soon as the weather turns here, you're going to be getting a lot of outdoor portraiture from me, outdoor lighting. I've been screaming about high-speed sync all winter, so I've got to go out and I've got to prove to people now, which it's really sad that I have to prove it. But nonetheless, I'll go prove that you can do all this crap without high-speed sync. So yeah, and it's all about, gearing buzzwords. Different channels go about it different ways. Like the big thing Manny Ortiz is doing now that he's a Sony guy, every video he does, it's about a camera, it's about a lens, it's about comparing lenses. That's great. I'm in this for the long haul, because the problem is once those lenses get old, those videos get old. Nobody watches them anymore. So they get a big rush on the front end, and they get a lot of attention, but then they just trail off and nobody watches them. I'm building for what's referred to as evergreen content. So if you guys want to know a little bit about my business model, there's my business model. I'm building evergreen content. So the idea is these are videos that can last. So all my tutorials, they're meant as basically lasting reference pieces. That's not to say that I'll never do something that is very topical and going to be like a quick hit trend. But I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not looking to get a quick boost of traffic and then have my videos die off. I want them to really stay steady going forward. So that's kind of the deal with that, okay? Let's see, Marcel, macro lens for portrait or not? You like the Tamron 28-75? The Tamron 28-75, that's a macro. I love macro. I mean, if you've watched my my video about how to shoot, or lenses for portraits. Sorry, gosh, that was a complete blank there. If you've watched my video about lenses for portraits, I talk about the Tokina, the 100mm f2.8 Pro D. That's a macro lens. I love it. And why I doubly love it, it's cheap. Literally, it's sub $400, which to me is a deal breaker. I was totally of the old school attitude that, hey, any lens that cheap is going to be a piece of junk. This lens is all brass interiors. It's got a plastic casing. Most lenses do today anyway. All brass interior, awesome lens. It's really old school design. Love it. It literally is the sharpest lens I've ever used in my kit, ever. And that's my go-to lens for all portrait work at this point. So, Troy, what do I think of a space blanket as a curved reflector? Yeah, you can, I mean, literally, you can use anything for reflectors. It all depends on how much you want it to reflect. Understand that a space blanket's going to reflect a lot of light. So if you've watched my videos, Troy, I tend to use more subtle reflectors. I don't like super bright reflectors. I use a lot of whites, period. I showed the gold reflectors in that one video just because I got sick and tired of some other YouTuber showing people to put the gold reflector underneath the subject. But if you watch all my tutorials, I use white reflectors 99% of the time. So the thing you got to be careful of with that space blanket is it's going to pop out a lot of light. So, Pirate, hello, Andrea, how are you? Thank you so much. Is it okay to narrow down the shots alone, especially if the actors, they don't know how to brand themselves? Well, let me give you two sides to that, Andrea. First of all, I say yes. I mean, anytime I can get a subject to let me pick the pictures, bingo, just made my life easier. But you're going to find that if people are paying you, they're going to want to have a say in their finished images. But you can control that. In other words, if you want to make sure that they're not being stupid in their picks, don't tell them that you're going to give them 30 proofs. Give them 10 or 5 and make them pick from that. That way you've got much more control. And then if you really want to play psychology, out of those 10 pictures, make sure that like 6 of them noticeably have an issue. So that way there's 4 that they might pick from, right? They're the 4 good ones. So there's a lot of things you can do there. But if people are paying, they're going to want to have some input on the final selections. And Andrea, you're in the business. So you already know that just because somebody thinks they know something, frequently they don't know something, but good luck telling them that. It's kind of like photographers that learn about shooting wide open for bokeh and high-speed sync. You know, they think they know it, but they don't know it. So in that sense, you kind of have to play to the idea that they think they know what they need. They think they know what's best. But indeed, you know, there's a simple rule of retail, not photography, but retail. You have to be careful with how many choices you get. I always remember, in fact, I talked about it the other night and I couldn't remember the name of the show. I'm a big Gordon Ramsay fan. So Gordon Ramsay for a while did a show called Kitchen Nightmares. And he would go into these restaurants that were like just about out of business because they were being run horribly, and he would fix them. 99% of the time, one of his biggest complaints, aside from the fact that the kitchens were a disaster, were that the menus had too much stuff on the menus. So he would go in and he would trim the menus down to like 6 or 7 choices for the whole menu. And that's it. And I've eaten at his restaurants. I've eaten at a bunch of Gordon Ramsay restaurants in various states and even in Europe. And it's the same thing. The menus are super simple, super basic. So there are fewer choices to make. So that would be my advice, Andre, is limit your choices. Let people have a selection because, let's face it, people want to feel empowered. But certainly if somebody offers to let you make the pick, hell yeah, make the pick. Okay? All right. Cody LaFada, I'm going to wrap up with this question, guys, since we're like way over here. We'll wrap up with this, and then I will be back to see you guys on Wednesday night for a Q&A, okay? Cody asks, why do you choose Mac over PC? I hear people say PC is just as good for graphics now, so why pay the premium for Apple? I've always wanted a Mac, but it's definitely pricey. I love your input. Okay, so let me give you A little bit of a background story. I'll give you my history with it because that's going to really explain the answer, Cody. I was late to the party as far as Mac goes. I've been a Mac user for 6 years now, which in photography years, especially in digital photography years, that means I waited a long time. I learned Photoshop on PC. I learned digital photography on PC. I was comfortable with PC because I had never worked with Macs. And I was the photographer that looked at Macs and said, how stupid is it to spend that kind of money on a Mac? Done. Now, it's worth knowing that while that was happening, I would upgrade my PC every 18 months. So there's a little thing in the tech world, and without getting into the names and the history of that, basically what happens is every 18 months, the tech world sets that as a target to be able to increase their ability, increase RAM, increase processor speed, increase hard drive performance and size, etc. So every 18 months in the PC world, the technology jumps, okay? So I want computers that work fast. I want computers that are powerful. So plus, we all know that Windows is an operating system that creates a lot of residual, which eventually slows the computers down. So I maintained my Windows machines well, but every 18 months, I would upgrade my main machine. And what I liked is I could do that for around $1,100 or $1,200 and get like the biggest, best machine that was available at the time. And obviously, I couldn't get a Mac for less than $3,000 that had the capacity that I wanted. So there was a guy who followed my work early on. He came to a couple of my workshops. I met him first at a workshop in Denver, and then I met him at a workshop I did out in Seattle. He came out to that. He used to work as a salesman for Apple. So I didn't put a whole lot of faith in what he was telling me because obviously he had drank the juice. He was an Apple guy. But he kept pushing Apple as being the better product, et cetera, and I just kind of kept blowing him off. And so finally, he said, look, he said, I know you don't believe me at this point because you know I work for Apple. He said, here's what I want you to do. He said, go find 3 or 4 other photographers that use Apple and ask them how often they upgrade their machines. Meaning, I upgrade every 18 months. Do the Apple people upgrade every 18 months or not? So I did. And sure enough, everyone that I talked to was giving me answers of 3.5 to 4 years or more in between upgrading their Macs. So now, if we back that up and we do the math, even at $1,000 per PC every 18 months, the Macs were actually turning out cheaper. So I didn't have a problem with the PCs not being better. I was very happy with what I was doing with the PCs. For me, it was all about price. Now, there's been a bunch of articles floating around on some of the photography blogs the last couple days that somebody has now just recently, very recently, bench tested a brand new PC machine that beats the pants off of Mac in terms of performance. And you can get it for 1/3 of the price of a Mac. Problem is it still runs on Windows. So I literally just last week purchased a PC laptop. It's Lenovo. It's got a touchscreen. It's got 12 gigabytes of RAM in it. It's an i7 processor, so it's a nice little laptop. I got a really good deal on it. I needed a backup machine for when I have college students here working from time to time. So I thought, great, I'm going to get a Windows PC just to get myself familiarized because I've been very worried over the last year to 2 years about some of the business decisions that Apple has made. I mean, the Mac Pro came out 3 years ago and it hasn't been upgraded since, over 3 years. It hasn't been upgraded since. The newest MacBooks don't have ports on them like they used to, so you've got to use dongles to be able to attach your peripherals. These are not photographer-friendly decisions that Mac has been making. So very recently, Tim Cook came out and made it very, very clear. We are not abandoning the professionals. We had to get some things put together with technology. We've gone off and we've kind of ignored them, and we're aware of that, and we apologize. Next year, we're going to make it up to you. I believe Apple. I believe them because Apple was built on the backs of graphics people, photographers, designers, illustrators, etc. But currently, I'm running on the 4K iMacs, which are coming up on 4 years old. They are awesome fast. I've got 32 gigs of RAM in it. I've got the i7 processor in it. It was one of the first i7 processors that came out. I have absolutely no reason to upgrade, and I'm ultimately saving myself a ton of money. The sucky part is when you write that check, because yes, they're expensive, but the upside is you're not going to write the check nearly as frequently. So that's why I stick with Mac. And I will admit, I'm not going to lie, I was actually kind of excited about picking up this Windows PC just to get a look at Windows 10 and all that stuff. I hate it with a passion. In fact, I've literally been stripping off one by one all the features of Windows 10 to get it back to actually look like a Mac, so that I've got all my program icons down in the bottom taskbar and getting all that crap off the desktop and all those tiles and all that stuff, all of which is just eating up resources. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm a Mac guy, and I'm willing, I've got enough invested in Mac at this point, and I'm comfortable enough with it. I'm going to wait it out at least another year to see if Apple makes good on their promise, which I believe they will. I really do. And if they don't, then yeah, when it comes time for me to do the next upgrade, I'll have to look at Windows. But I would be shocked if that happens. So Cody, I hope that helps. That's why my decision goes. The flip side of that, if you're a Windows guy, so not to contradict myself, but seriously, if you're a Windows guy, you've always been a Windows guy, you're super, super comfortable with Windows, and you've got a nice high-speed machine, and it's meeting your needs. That's the key. Is it meeting your needs? Then I'd be the first to tell you you'd be a fool to change. Okay? So if you're happy with Windows, if you know it inside out, because I was that guy, I was happy with Windows, I knew it inside out and backwards, I had learned how to maintain my machines properly to keep the speed up, all that stuff. If you're happy with it, don't do it. So, that's what I would recommend. Okay, gang. So listen, only 22 minutes overtime. That's not bad. Not bad at all. So listen, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me here tonight. I should have switched that over a while ago, right? I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me here tonight. I really, really appreciate the support. I appreciate all the tweets that went out to let people know that we're on. The fact that you guys are interacting and having conversation. Remember, I will be back here Wednesday night. Wednesday night's a fun one. If you guys haven't been here for a Wednesday night yet, check out Wednesday nights. Please, trust me. Wednesday nights are a really cool night. It's all Q&A. Your questions, my answers. Obviously, I never finish in quite an hour. Always goes a little bit over, but really, really fast-paced. A lot of cool stuff to talk about. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'm going to take a break. I hope that you guys have a great week. I hope that you all get to do some shooting. And as always, gang, I need you to remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go and pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.